Testing, testing.
Good morning. It's 10 o'clock, so I'd like to call the meeting to order. And the first thing we do is we acknowledge the fact that we're meeting on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, in particular Qualicum First Nation. We have the agenda, and so we'd like to add the green sheet, if Councillor agrees, to the 11.1 on the staff reports. There's 3 items that we can add there before financial administration. Everybody okay with that? Thank you. Any other changes to the agenda? Then the agenda is adopted by consent. So we have the meeting with the auditor this later today. So right now that will be. Are they going to be on Zoom, Miss? Same thing? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So the consent agenda, our correspondence log for information. Is anything Council wants to add to that? Councillor Harrison?
Yeah, just one item on the moss spraying, just for folks to know.
I think everybody got a carton in the mail about that, and people wondered what is there another word for the moth, and there's another word for the moth that they use, but I'm not sure what it is.
Oh, it's just one brief point, sorry, Your Worship, with your indulgence. It's just the spray. Apparently it's called BTK. It's so mild that you can use it and still be considered organic for your produce when you're a farmer. So we got one email from folks who were very worried about what the chemical was. It's a very, very mild pesticide, and it's designed specifically in that window to target the invasive species only. So just some info for folks if they're worried about that.
Thank you. So as far as the correspondence log and the consent agenda, anything else? Then the consent agenda is adopted, and the minutes from April 10 and 17 council meetings. Any errors or omissions? Seeing no omissions, then the agenda is the minutes are approved by consent. Delegations. So if Mr. Hare, if you would introduce the delegation for the financial statements.
Thank you, Your Worship. Michaela Roque from KPMG will be presenting the draft audited financial statements at this meeting.
Welcome, Michaela. You have the floor. Can she hear me? Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for having us here to present the financial statements for the town of Qualicum Beach for December 31st, 2023. So we're looking back at their fiscal year that just wrapped up. I will be presenting the financial statements in a PowerPoint type format. But happy to take any questions as we go. For any of the details, we do have the main statements here as well. So we will go through the auditor's report. We'll go through the consolidated financial statement figures and just a few highlights and take questions at the end. So in terms of our independent auditor's report, KPMG will be providing a clean audit opinion over the consolidated financial statements in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. That means that there is no material misstatements noted in our testing while we went through the audit. Your finance team for all their hard work and being fully transparent throughout the whole audit. Anything we needed, we were provided. So we really appreciate the hard work that was taken. I know there was additional standards this year that just added a lot of extra work for finance. So a huge thank you to them, and we really enjoyed working with them. And a huge thank you to Mayor and Council for having us as your external auditors. So we'll dig into the numbers. The statement of financial position, this is a snapshot right at December 31st, 2023. So we'll start with the financial assets. This is anything that can be converted that is either cash or can be converted to cash fairly quickly. In terms of cash and cash equivalents, the town of Qualicum Beach had 29.3 million in various cash accounts through fiscal 2023, compared to 22.4 in fiscal 2022. This year we did see an increase in cash. You'll see shortly that there was a surplus in the year, which helped contribute to the additional cash flow. Accounts receivable has come in at 3.4 million compared to 2.7 million in the previous year. So included in here are funding and grants that were waiting to be received. There's about $1 million of provincial grants and another $1 million in federal for the Beach Creek walkway from Active Transportation Canada. So that's why you see an increase in accounts receivable this year. Total financial assets has come in at 32.8 compared to 25.2 million in the previous year. Now we'll flip sides to the liabilities. So this is everything that the town had owed right at December 31st. Accounts payable and accrued liabilities was sitting at 4.2 million compared to 2.9 million in the previous year. So these accounts payable and accrued liabilities is everything that the town of Qualicum Beach owed right at December and just hadn't quite yet made the payment, but it did belong to fiscal 2023. Included in here is all the invoices that needed to be paid to vendors, to about $2.6 million in vendor invoices waiting to be paid. As well, there was $988,000 in federal funds that needed to be paid for policing services, included in this 4.2 million. The next line is deferred revenue. Deferred revenue is sitting at 6.1 million at December 31st compared to 5.2 million in the previous year. So included in deferred revenue, this is revenue that you have in your bank account. You've received it, but it's for specific purposes that hadn't been executed as of yet. And so included in there are development cost charges of 2.9 million included in that 6.1, as well as prepaid taxes of 1.5 million, and grants that are waiting to be reported into revenue once the projects get executed of about 913,000. Performance bonds and deposits is sitting at just over $1 million compared to 917,000 in the previous year. Long-term debt is sitting at just under 3.7 million compared to 2.3 million in the previous year. So this is debt for still remaining for the fire hall, 925,000, the fire truck pumper, 771,000, and then new this year was $2 million for the for a new fire truck with ladder. That's why you see an increase in the long-term debt for with the balance sitting at 3.697 million. New this year is the new asset retirement obligation standard. And so this new standard from Public Sector Accounting Standards requires that their entities record an estimate .
Michaela, we can't hear you anymore.
Oh. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, sorry about that. The asset retirement obligation is where I cut out at. Yeah, okay. So management had estimated how much liability was in the control of the town of Qualicum Beach for assets that they needed to clean up in a specific way due to either environmental laws or the fact that, for example, asbestos has to be cleaned up in a certain way. So hazardous materials have to be remediated specifically in a certain way. And that's costs that are going to be incurred by the town. Maybe not today or tomorrow. It could be 50 years from now, but the public sector standards do require that estimate of this obligation or liability be put on the books now of the town. So the ARO obligation has come in at $307,000. So when you add all the total financial liabilities together, the balance is 16.1 million compared to 12 million in the previous year of financial liabilities. Now this last line here is the net financial assets. So when we take the net total financial assets, and if you were to pay off and give back all of the funding for deferred revenue, and this is the net number from a financial perspective, which speaks to the health of the town of Qualicum Beach. And so it's sitting at 16.7 million in a net positive position if you were to pay off all your debts. This is a number that those charged with governance like to take a look at to make sure they have enough assets on hand to be able to have to pay all of their liabilities. So it's an important number. The town of Qualicum Beach also does have non-financial assets. So these are assets that can be sold for cash, but is not, the municipality is not in the business of doing that, and they need their physical assets to provide all the services to citizens. And so tangible capital assets is the biggest non-financial asset. It's come in at 134.1 million compared to 128.5 million. Now this is the value you have in your physical assets. And every year there is what we call amortization or depreciation taken. The cost of the asset can't stay at 100% all the time because of the wear and tear. So this year, $3.9 million of amortization was recorded as a non-cash expense in the bottom line of the town of Qualicum Beach. So it reduced the TCA balance, what we call tangible capital asset balance, by 3.9, but as well, the town of Qualicum Beach added 9.5 million in additions this year, which is why you see an increase in capital. This year, the fire truck was added for the $2 million. There was 2.4 million spent on the Beach Creek observation deck, as well 1.5 million on East Village, and 395,000 on the airport fuel system. So those are some of the bigger capital items that were purchased this year out of that 9.5 million of capital additions that was added to the town. Inventories is sitting at 180,000 compared to 97,000. The town also has prepaid expenses of 96,000. So total non-financial assets is 134.4 million compared to 128.6 million in the previous year. This next slide here shows the statement of operations. These are all the transactions that happened just in fiscal 2023. Revenue was budgeted to be at 26.7 million, and it came in at 28.9 compared to 26.8 in the previous year. We'll take a look at revenue here shortly in a little bit more detail. Expenses as well. The budget was 17.5 million, and the expenses came in at 19.6 compared to 18.4 in the previous year. So when you take your revenue less your expenses, the annual surplus for the year was expected to be 9.1, and it came in at 9.2 of annual surplus compared to 8.3. And so that 9.2 gets added to your accumulated surplus, which is the surpluses and deficits that have been incurred by the town since its inception, which is sitting at 151.1 million compared to 141.9 million in the previous year. So this slide just shows that there was an increase in your net financial assets this year, as we had discussed, which is the right trajectory. You do want to see more net financial assets. That means that you have excess after paying out all your liabilities. So I'll go through the highlights. I'll go through the revenue and what makes up that balance. So your biggest piece of that is your taxation revenue. This year there was a significant amount of government grants as well, 7.3 million compared to 5.1 in the previous year. Taxation sitting at 13.4 million, and fees and charges sitting at 4.1 million, which makes up the next biggest piece of the pie, very similar to the previous year, sitting at 4.1. Expenses have also come in very comparable to the previous year. Transportation services has the biggest piece of the pie in terms of expenses. 6.3 million is what was spent in transportation services this year compared to 6.6 million in the previous year. Planning and development services as well came in at 2.1 million compared to 1.9 in the previous year. And water services saw an increase at 2.2 million compared to 1.7 million in the previous year. Your 134.1 million of tangible capital assets is just broken out into different buckets here. Between land and buildings and transportation is where you see most of your physical tangible capital assets. But there's a breakdown there for water infrastructure and sewer infrastructure as well. So I'll talk a little bit about the accumulated surplus. So I did mention that 9.2 million in surplus this year got added to your accumulated surplus, which is all your surpluses and deficits over the years since the inception of the municipality. So this number, I just want to clarify, is, that's not free and clear surpluses of 151 million that the town can kind of play with. A big chunk of it is already tied up in physical assets. So I just wanted to break out into the different buckets, what makes up that 151 million so that everybody has a good understanding of that. 130.1 million of it is already, the cash has outflowed. The value is just sitting in your physical assets. General fund has a surplus of 1.3 million, water 1.1 million, sewer 317,000. There's also reserves set aside for the future of the town of Qualicum Beach. So 15.7 million is sitting in statutory reserves and 2.4 million sitting in non-statutory reserves. So I just wanted to break that out into the individual buckets of what makes up the surpluses. We also want to highlight the statutory and non-statutory reserves here. It's a bit of a busy screen, but definitely your reserves are growing this year. There is the new Growing Communities Fund reserve. There's 3.4 million sitting there for future projects. There's water infrastructure reserve sitting at 2.8 million as well. The asset replacement reserve fund, 5.7 million is sitting there for asset replacement. And then some of the other comparable, the property reserve fund is sitting similar to what it was in previous year, just included interest, sitting at 2.1 million. There's a strategic initiatives reserve of 771,000. You do still have your community works reserve, your gas tax monies, 919,000 still remaining, and then some smaller reserves as well here. Affordable housing reserve sitting at still at 450,000. And that was everything. I'm happy to take some questions. I'll pass it back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Roque. Any questions from Council? Council had a presentation earlier about some of the other issues that Council would need to deal with in camera, but it looks to me that we can categorize that Qualicum Beach is financially in good shape. Would you comment on that?
Yes. Yeah, based on the net financial assets figure, you would have excess funds sitting there, including all your reserve monies. There is funds sitting aside there for future, but it is in a healthy cash position from a financial assets perspective.
Thank you. Seeing no questions from council, we appreciate the work you do for us and the timely responses and presentations you make for us. Thank you very much, Michaela, and your company.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you. The next item is the correspondence, and the Royal Canadian Legion branch asked for a letter of support. Could I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Harrison, Councillor Skipsey. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. Then the tax rates bylaw, and there's a staff recommendation. Could someone make a motion to adopt? Councillor Vander, Valk, Councillor Young seconding. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And then the parcel tax bylaw 791 for 2024, and there's also a staff recommendation. Councillor Young, Councillor Vander Valk, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Did you get all the names from? I'm going a bit slower, but that's. And there is a notice of motion under my report, and perhaps if staff could put the picture up of the page that was in the draft bus garage concept design and report. I think it's page 17. It wasn't in our package, but I think staff has another access to it. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. I don't believe it was in the package today, so if it's okay, I'll just describe the plan as it is. So as council would recall, there were two potential alternative locations for a parkade entrance that was presented to council as part of the draft bus garage design report. One of the parkade entrances was closer to Fern Road, and that interfered somewhat with the functionality of the public square that was being proposed. The second entrance was farther back towards 4th Avenue, and that left the public square completely clear for other purposes. It also provided a different way of accessing the underground parking for Naked Naturals. So my understanding is that your notice of motion before you today would endorse the second of those options, so that the parkade entrance would be further from Fern Road, so that it wouldn't interfere with that functionality. And if I could also give a little bit of context in that the bus garage design report is still being finalized. However, it's my understanding that Naked Naturals does want to proceed with their design process, and the intention of this notice of motion is to at least make a decision on that one aspect of the design so that they can proceed with the next steps of the process. Thank you, Mayor Westbrook.
Thank you. Is council confident that what you're hearing is what you know or remember from the presentation? This particular selection of the site would allow for a future addition for underground parking to the corner of the property of Fern and Memorial, and also behind the old schoolhouse if we want to. But it leaves these options open. There it is. I think we're getting to the picture. Page 17 from the report. That's a different page. There. There, I think you went past it. There it is. That's the one, isn't it? So you can see it coming from 4th Avenue, and then it goes up, and it would be stopped at where they turn right on the screen to the underground parking of the store, but the rest could be for future reference. So that's the location, and the owners indicated if we determine this, then they would go to the architect and start designing the store accordingly. So if council agrees, we could have a motion. I make the motion if I could have a seconder. Councillor Skipsey, discussion. Councillor Harrison.
And just in case folks don't, at home, don't have the agenda in front of them, staff do support this recommendation. So if staff support this, I think that's reasonable as well.
Any other comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. And thank you for the staff to pull that page up. It's a little more helpful for us to look at where we're going. Appreciate that very much. Public Safety, Councillor Harrison.
Okay. Nothing? Okay.
Well, I put some of my stuff in the agenda.
Okay, sorry, my apologies. So there's been a few things, obviously AVICC, we were all there.
Yeah.
But sort of two things that I sort of did where the rest of council was not present. One was just the other day. So Mr. Hare, our Director of Finance, attended as well. And it was the Ministry of Public Safety under Mike Farnsworth was discussing the rollout of potential, so it's not something that's a decision of government yet, but it's the provincial government staff getting prepared to provide a report essentially to the minister, and then the government will have a decision to make. So who knows? But the proposed idea is based on actually several years worth of work, and the idea is you have a island-wide murder investigation unit. So for all murders on the island, there's one unit that would investigate every murder on the island. For our community, the funding breakdown is 3/4 of the cost will be related to how much crime you have in your community, and then 1/4 of the cost is based on your population. So that's copying an existing model in the Lower Mainland, which apparently works pretty well. For our community, we have a very low rate of crimes. So not just the most serious crimes of murder and attempted murder, but also just crimes in general. So our crime severity index is very low. So for the town, it would probably be pretty inexpensive to join, probably. I would knock on wood, I don't want to jinx it. But it essentially functions as an insurance policy because they showed a few case files of real cases that have happened on the island. Forgive me if I'm droning on for a sec, but I do want to give a real shout out. There was one case was actually from our detachment, it's from Oceanside, and it was the fastest, most inexpensive case that they saw. And it was actually Staff Sergeant DeCoyne who caught the murder in a domestic murder within 3 hours. So hat tip to Travis on that, to Staff Sergeant DeCoyne. But even that was $100,000. And the worst case scenario was a biker gang with a targeted killing, and that cost $7 million. So murder investigations are incredibly onerous now with all the paperwork you need to do. So it's something that we'll get more information on in the near future. They did mention they'd give us a rough estimate of what the cost would be if everyone participates. And then obviously not everyone will initially participate, so we'll see what the future holds. It's not even clear if the government will accept that or not, but it was a very interesting get-together down in Langford, which I had to get up very early in the morning for. And the other thing was last week there was a Vancouver Island Rent, so that was put on by the BC Nonprofit Housing Association. Lisa Helps gave her presentation again for BC Builds with the exact same slide deck from AVICC, so council is probably pretty familiar with that. But it was good to see people like Walter Hoogland, some other people in the sector. Again, I hadn't seen them for a while. There's also Councillor Young and I participate in an affordable housing task force. There's going to be a get-together in June, and hopefully there'll be more information in the future on that. But it's just to sort of give folks a sense of what are some of the things that are ongoing, and then also to how we could maybe try to look at getting some things done in that area. And the last thing is that, just a moment ago I was talking to Councillor Skipsey, so last meeting we had an excellent presentation on things like how to reduce your water usage for your garden. And at AVICC there was a councillor from Souk who had a great idea on how to advance their climate change adaptation plan. And that's what they do is they just allocate a set of money every year, and then they let nonprofits in the community say, here's what we want to do to advance your climate change plan. And it comes from the bottom up, not from the top down. And with all the demands on staff right now, we don't have a lot of capacity for top down, unfortunately, to advance things. So when we're talking about how we can spend money to mitigate climate change. I really think the Souk example is a great idea. Normally I'd say let's get a report on that in the next few months, but this is not a good time to say that. So this is more a next year thing. But just one example I had at the top of my head for the presentation we had is what if we had a competition where we have $1,000 of town funding, $500 first place, $300 second, $200 third, and you could have a competition for who has the best water light garden in Qualicum Beach. And folks can all contribute to that, who has the most appropriate lawn. And what we try to do is reduce our water usage. We're paying $1,000 as a town, but you think of the reduced water usage in the town as a whole, it's probably worth more than $1,000. So things like that there's a lot of potential, but obviously it's very early days and staff are slammed right now, so I'm not saying we do anything. But just more next year, it might be a good idea to look at what Souk was doing and see if we can adapt something like that for Qualicum Beach. And I think the professionalism on the environmental and sustainability would be great. I'm sorry, there was a young man, and forgive me, just through the chair to Councillor Skipsey or staff, I'm not sure. I know we had a discussion about youth positions on the Environment Sustainability Committee. There was a young man who came up to me personally and said, oh, I'd really love to be on that committee. And I don't know if there's something where there's space. Okay, so I'll get back to him and let him know. I just wanted to double check on that before. As folks might see from the meeting, some of the points of contact, the person I directed him to is not, is away for a while. So just want to make sure that he gets that information. Okay, and with that is everything.
Thank you, Councillor. And I appreciate you and Mr. Hare going there, I think it was yesterday, was it not? Yeah. 30th? About these major crime issues where, yes, we've been lucky with not having serious crimes here, but if it does happen and you get hit with a major crime, and it doesn't even have to be from somebody who lives in our area, but if a person gets killed in our area community, it could be millions of dollars. So it is like an insurance if we could all join. I appreciate it, both of you going very much. Councillor Skipsey.
Okay, I just have a couple of items. One, I met with BYLAWS and some of the people who currently live in Area G. They had shown up at our council open house and were concerned about changes to one of the RDN's bylaws they thought might negatively impact them and their current living situation. But they did come away feeling much better about the intention, learning about the intentions behind the bylaw. And apparently, after over 400 amendments to the bylaw, the province stepped in and said, no more. It's time to redo this bylaw. So anyways, I think that was a good exercise. I learned a lot about that situation. And if anybody has any questions, Leanne Wallace would be the contact. The Repair Cafe was a big success with 126 items were brought in for repair. And shout out to our Shinjini for being there to shed light on the town's initiatives and direction. And also the RDN was there to share information about zero waste and that program. And I'll just mention that I stopped by the tree planting that took place on Earth Day, April 22nd, and it looked like the students were doing a great job. And then the kindergarten students came by later in the afternoon to help with the pollinator pathway, and from all accounts, it was a great success.
Thank you, Councillor Skipsey. Councillor Vander.
Thank you. Well, once again, I have handed my liaison report in, and it is included in the agenda. There isn't really anything for me to add at this point, other than on the last item. I spoke with Mr. Chandler. I don't know if you recall, he's the fellow who wanted to find out if the town could, or told the town about his trail rider project, and he has managed to raise enough money to buy 2 trail riders, and he's expecting their arrival on May the 7th. And he is still looking for a place for the bikes to be stored and managed. So that's ongoing, and has talked with, or will be talking with, Access Oceanside Association, looking at possible solutions. He is planning to ride in the ride on the Trail Rider in the Move to Cure ALS event in Parksville on Sunday, the 9th of June, and for the Arrington High Neighbor Day Parade in mid-August. So I don't know the details about Family Day, but I did mention to him that Councillor Skipsey and I rode our bikes in the Family Day Parade last year, and perhaps he would like to join us. So he's thinking that over, and I will make contact with the person in charge of the parade and see if that's a possibility, because I think he definitely should be in our parade for town of Qualicum Beach. And that's about it.
And that shouldn't be a problem. And I really appreciate you writing your report so it can be added to the agenda. That's for staff and everybody very handy. Councillor Young.
Going last, I always appreciate everyone mentioning all the things that we've done. So it cuts back for what I have to say, but I just want to point out that it's wonderful to see how many Qualicum Beach adults and children are all supportive and mindful of each other in our environment, such as when we go to 100 Women Who Care, the Brant Festival at Arrowview School, Mount Arrowsmith Biosphere Region Society, and the Rotary Community Cleanup on Earth Day. And the St. Stephen's Church Repair Cafe that Anne mentioned. It's always, our community is so wonderful in participating and caring about the environment. I know Mayor Westbrook has mentioned about the Petrocan opening on by the Qualicum First Nation, and I just want to point out what a wonderful concept it is, where they're harvesting the rainwater, and so the local fire department can utilize that instead of having the water trucked in for them to fight fires with. And I did have a local resident mention how it was hypocritical for us to be suing Big Oil in a class action lawsuit. So, and we're attending an opening of a gas station. But going back to that thought, maybe the legal monies that's asked by the class action lawsuit would be better spent on immediate local environmental improvement in our community. Also, Qualicum Beach Family Day, May 26th, is fast approaching. It's a fun-filled event day, and volunteers are still needed to help, so please apply online. Check out the Tosh Art Center on Instagram for their many new events and over 40 classes offered for adults and children. Save the date. Tea by the Sea, which is a summer celebration and fundraiser at the Qualicum Beach Rotary Park to benefit Tosh and all of us to have an event to go to. It's June the 21st from 1:30 till 3:30, Tea by the Sea. Also, the Qualicum Beach Museum, Tuesday, May the 7th at 12 p.m. Everyone is welcome to this free event. It is Qualicum Reads. It's a celebration of a local writing and creativity featuring Ben Nuttall-Smith. He's the author of 9 major publications, including a memoir, historical fiction, poetry, and a major film script. And I'm also hoping that some of the students from KSS will be attending this wonderful QB Reads, because it's inspirational for all that he's done. Qualicum Beach is still in need of more doctors and nurse practitioners. Please help spread the word that this is a wonderful place to work and live. All of council has been always active on trying to fulfill this need that we have. We've attended many meetings. Also drop into our local library next door, Mindfulness in May, an annual youth arts expedition is being showcased now till May 11th. This year's theme is Force, See, and Self. Check out the exhibit and vote on your favorite piece for that student to win one of the cash prizes. Also, their opening gala is tomorrow, 6 to 8 p.m. in the town lobby, and everyone is welcomed. That's it.
Thank you. Next, staff reports. Well, we don't have the core administrator at the moment, but we got an interim, and that's Mr. Sales.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. This item is an authorization of St. Mark's Community Fair, which is planned to proceed on July 27th. The complete motion is in your package, but it does include some town contributions to supporting the event, including, not limited to, the provision of the two portable toilets, which are mentioned in the staff report. So the recommendation is to proceed with authorization. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Skipsey, Councillor Harrison, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Finance, Mr. Hare. Sorry, I forgot to introduce those three supplementary items, and I think we'll deal with them first. And one is that the meeting schedule be amended to start the next council meeting, which is May 29th, at 1 o'clock. If I could, so I move that we change the meeting time to 1 o'clock. If I have a seconder, Councillor Vander, discussion. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. And the next one is the 1 mile swim, which was identified first for a different day and is now to August 18. Councillor Skipsey, Councillor Vander, discussion. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carries. Am I going, sorry, did you get the names? The names are okay? Okay, and then the staff recommendation that the May 22nd committee of the whole meeting will not be held. Councillor Skipsey, Councillor Harrison, discussion. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. I might have gone a little fast with the names, but are you okay? Are you okay? Thank you. Finance, Mr. Hare.
Thank you, Your Worship. So every year, Council must accept the financial statements after they've been presented. So we had our auditors present the financial statements. So the motion in the report here is for Council to formally accept those financial statements that were presented.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison, Councillor Vander, discussion. Well, Councillor Skipsey.
Well, there's just one little typo in that resolution. We want the town of Qualicum Beach as presented, please.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that gets. I don't know, what is with that? I mean, we don't say Campbell, you say Campbell River. You don't say Columbia, it's British Columbia. Why not say Qualicum Beach? It's a beautiful name. Councillor Harrison.
Sorry, I just wanted to point out too, the auditor mentioned it briefly, but there's been a significant increase in grant revenue we've received this year. So while staff are busy trying to ensure our town bylaws align with provincial requirements, which is a lot of work, I've done one grant application in my time as a councillor, which was unsuccessful, unsurprisingly. But it is a ton of work to do a grant application, and then there's a ton of reporting that goes into that after as well. So for us to be as successful as we are, and I have noticed the number of grants we're actually being successful with, it's higher than average. So kudos to staff for all the hard work and all the grant applications, because it is a surprising amount of work to do. Thanks so much.
Thank you, and thank you to staff for doing all that work. So the motion to accept has been made, and it's been seconded for the discussion. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried unanimously. Planning, Mr. Sales.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. We have a recommendation on the planning section today, and it addresses the implementation of Bill 44. Council is aware that there will be a major zoning amendment coming forth to Council at an upcoming meeting that will increase the residential density permitted in many zones throughout the town. The province in Bill 44 has prohibited the town from holding a public hearing for amendments that are solely related to the implementation of that regulation. However, the wording of the regulation is ambiguous in that it doesn't necessarily state whether a public hearing should be held or should not be held for other incidental amendments that are good practice to include along with the implementation of Bill 44. So the recommendation before you today was developed in consultation with the town's legal counsel to ensure that there's a minimal risk of legal challenge after the zoning amendment is put through. So in many ways, it is a formality. It's a belt and suspenders approach to minimizing liability down the road. So the recommendation is to adopt this recommendation before you today. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're voting on be it resolved. Councillor Harrison, Councillor Vander, Discussion, Councillor Harrison.
And just also too, I know some folks might be concerned when they hear public hearings will not be held, but at the same time, you're still free to contact both staff and your elected representatives at any time. And arguably, that's the one advantage, is that public hearings shut down your ability to actually reach out to your elected representative after the public hearing. So if you hadn't heard about it and you had some very important thoughts a week before adoption, you can still contact us. So if you're concerned about it, please reach out to either staff or council. Thanks.
Thank you for drawing out the positive side of this rather negative thing about not allowing public hearings. But you're right, because after public hearing, we cannot accept more information directly. So in this case, that's not an issue. So it's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. And I think that concludes today's meeting. Tomorrow, we're having our Youth Appreciation Lunch, and I want to thank staff. Several sitting here in the room. Bernie, thank you. Others, Tanya, for organizing the Youth Appreciation Lunch, because we do appreciate our lunch. So tomorrow around lunchtime, you're going to see a lot of young people in the square. It's not a protest, it's just a fun thing where the fire department makes up the food and staff helps, and we do some prize drawing and things like that. So it should be a fun event. And later this afternoon, and you're all invited, at 1 o'clock is the first rolling of the lawn bowl. And I'm always doing the honor, but I'd be pleased to have anybody else join in, because you all get to roll one if you like. Because it's a fun game, and it's a wonderful group with both their outdoor and indoor facility. So with that, a motion to adjourn. Councillor Vander, Councillor Harrison, we are adjourned, and so the date says Wednesday 29th for the next council meeting. It will be 1 o'clock. Thank you, everybody, and meeting is adjourned. Thank you.